Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for Wargame Weekly, episode number 1.
Yeah,
I'm John Caspian.
I'm John Galvin, and we got two Johns.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's the Jons.
yeah. Cool. So, Wargame Weekly is a departure from our normal Giga Rambles because those are in the process of being moved to Saturday. So, John, what are we here to do today?
So we talk all about, first of all, the overall culture of wargaming and latest releases and stuff. And then we have two different sides of it. So then your side is going to be more of the big box and or things like Riot Quest and the things from the big companies because you love that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I've been focusing more lately on the smaller sized games. Besides Legion, I'm mostly getting into skirmish games nowadays. So this is going to be, I'm going to talk about games like, oh my gosh, wow, what's Exodus, Dust, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, all the smaller war games that people want to hear about, but don't often get talked about too much.
Yeah. Well, so today we have several things to talk about. We have a whole new line of releases for Malifaux, Warhammer 40k, A Song of Ice and Fire. And then we also have a lot of things happening in terms of the competitive scene, both in Warhammer 40k with the new FAQs that just went live. And then I also have a little bit of a recap from Crucible down in Orlando that I went to over the weekend.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that did just happen. And you won a Best Painted for something, right?
Yeah, my entire army won Best Painted.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah. So, if you want to start things off, John, skirmish games or anything like that, new releases or things that you've been up to in the past week?
Oh, so much, so much. So, let's start off with Star Wars Legion. It releases today, which is October 18th. I've got here the little Cylon, or as someone said online, Cyclone troopers. So they're chrome-based with a little bit of Nuln Oil gloss wash. And then for my commanders of each unit, I actually have painted up in the separate colors. So this guy is going to be red for the red squad. And then I have a blue for the blue squad. So I've pretty much gotten the entire core set painted up except the Droidicas, which I will try to stream if possible because people have been asking how to paint that up. And so the core box comes with General Grievous, General Kenobi, that's one for each of the two factions, 2 squads of either B1s or the clones, and that's the type Phase 1 clones. Then you have the, I think it's called a Bark, yeah, it's the little 2-man speeder that the clones have.
Nice.
And then finally you have Droidicas. What's interesting about the Droidicas is there's actually 4 models, but they're in 2 different poses. So what people have said to do is, you take it as one squad, and then when they roll forward in their little, I guess, rolling mode, which they have, which is basically you activate it, you move them like a 3 versus a 1, and then they drop their shield, and then they can't shoot. But they're actually gain dodge, which is cool. So they gain cover, basically. So then once that happens, you have 4 models, right? So you can actually play with 2 squads. So that's what I've been doing.
That's great.
Because I just have one model, and then that's the upright position. The other model, that's the balled up one.
Right.
So I don't see why you can't play with 2 squads.
Yeah.
But I suppose, legally speaking, for the FFG tournaments and stuff, you have to have a separate card per squad. So that's one thing to think about if you're going to, like, an official tournament or something.
Right.
Otherwise, this box set is amazing. And I recommend getting at least 4 of each, like, squad type. That also keeps you legal, gets you around 800 points. But they have the vehicles coming out very soon.
Yeah.
So you can look for the AAT and then the whatever the clone one is. I don't really care about, but I love all of the droid stuff like crazy.
Yeah. No, it's really exciting. I know we have a couple of events coming up in the store with Star Wars Legion, and Matt Blaisdell has really been promoting that over the last couple of months to get ready for this release. And it's nice to see the game actually be brought up to 4 factions with this box set coming out. So there's now Rebels, Empire, the Republic, and now the Separatists. So 4 factions. It'll be really great to see the diversity in terms of lists and things like that will come about because, there's a lot of new stuff.
And the difference in gameplay, too. I really wasn't expecting it to play that differently. but it really does. So the separatists focus on kind of clumping and activating everything in a kind of sequence. It's very much like a computer system, right? Which
Right.
is cool because they're droids. But the clones have this whole like surge token sharing mechanic where they can actually drop things off to each other to help them out with different roles,
Oh, that's
which makes it really versatile. So they're actually the versatile faction. It's cool stuff.
yeah. No, that's really cool. Well, great. So with that, we'll kind of move into the releases for the bigger box games coming out. So this week sees the release of Blood of the Phoenix, Phoenix Rising from Warhammer 40k. Those who are Eldar players or Eldari or Assyriani, I think is like the
Mm-hmm.
proper name of the craft world
Yep.
Eldar. Drukhari, Yunari, and Harlequins should all be very excited because of this new release. Not only are we finally seeing a plastic version of Drazar, Janezar, Incubi, and Banshees. Oh my god, this is a lot of words. But
Yeah.
we are
You're
seeing
doing
a
good.
whole new set of rules for these Eldar players. And the most exciting thing is you can now make your own craft worlds. So similar to how the release of Spacebook Space Marines, no, Codex Space Marines, where you get to craft your own chapter, you now get to pick these special rules that you would want for your own personalized craft world. And all these are really
Sweet.
exciting just because you get to customize and really make the rules fit the lore of your own chapter or craft world or whatever you do. Uh, Now, we did get a limited supply in of Blood of the Phoenix, and we are running a special in the store through today if you prepay for the box set that releases tomorrow. So, yeah, definitely something to take a look about. With Blood of the Phoenix, it's the first of the Psychic Awakening books. So, this is like the new series. The way that they are going to continually update the factions of the game is through these like box set / book releases.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here with my Necrons, like, yep, no psychic for us.
Well, no, but Necrons, like every single faction is going to get touched upon with this release structure. And if you really think about it, Janezar and Drazar are not psychers.
Right.
There's
It's
nothing
true.
to do with psychic abilities in the first box set. And I think that was really important for Games Workshop to do because it gives people more or less a frame of reference on what to expect, as in anything goes, right? Like, yes, the
Right.
title is Psychic Awakening, but that doesn't mean that the key players are all going to be psychers. So people like Necron players and heck, even Tau, they've all been listed as possible, on the list of armies to receive an update through this new campaign. So it's all really exciting, and I heard rumors that I think it's Trazan the Infinite, the guy who like has the giant intergalactic museum / menagerie.
Yes.
He is supposed to be a major player in this.
Oh,
So
sweet. Isn't he the one that rescued the Cadians?
yeah, kind of, sort of. Uh, so he was a major player in that campaign, the Fall of Cadia, as well as releasing Greyfax, um, and also potentially grabbing Creed at the last moment. Um, after his
Right.
battle with
Yeah.
Abaddon.
Yeah.
So we might see a new plastic version of him with whenever the Necrons see a new release, right? So it might be Trazan and plastic, flayed ones. And I think this is really cool because I think it is giving these factions a way of seeing some characters that need you know, a new model because it's been forever, and also ways to get plastic kits out for just a select few units per faction, just so they can, flush things out or get things replaced. Flayed ones are one of the few models in the Necron line that are still resin, at least in terms of units. So it'd be good to see a plastic version of them. Now that's not confirmed at all, but it's something
That
that we
beautiful
could do.
fine cast.
Yeah. Um, but so it's really exciting because I heard, and also it's one of those things where the Black Templar are absent from the Imperial Fist Codex supplement. So a lot of people think that whenever it's time for Space Marines to get their chance in Psychic Awakening, that we might see the Black Templar there with new rules and maybe a new model kit to kind of supplement that.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So But until then, Blood of the Phoenix is the first box set. It is $230 at retail. It comes with the new models, comes with the actual rule book itself, like the campaign book. And I think that's something a lot of people overlook. The models in the box are already a huge deal, but the fact of the matter is you already get, or you get the campaign book in there as well, which is like a $40 book. Just kind of sweetens the pot. But we have that in store in limited supply, so please come in, put your pre-orders before they're all gone.
Absolutely.
All right.
Very cool. Very cool.
That's my.
But then now there's drama related to all of these new releases coming out.
So one of the great things about this day and age is that we're able to update rules to these tabletop games much quicker than we ever were before. Minus side is, unlike PC games where you do initial push where you're like, oh hey, I bought this game, I really like this faction. Oh no, it got nerfed. Well, I still have the whole game to play with. When you invest in something that seems really strong, especially if you're a tournament player, and the rules change relatively quickly on you before you even had a chance to play with those models in a tournament, or even heck, get them assembled and painted, it can be very disenfranchising. And so that's where kind of the drama stems from. The new errata that came out with the Iron Hands. Iron Hands from the get-go were basically the strongest chapter of the Space Marines with this new Codex Supplement wave. And the errata that came out went across the board, went through everything that seemed a little too good, and they nerfed it. And
hard.
Yeah. And so, like, when they add a CP to like one of your popular stratagems, you're like, okay, that's frustrating. But when it's to every single strong stratagem that you have, that they increase the cost, and when they change a lot of the special rules to no longer function in a similar format, then what you've built and what you have purchased for that no longer becomes as relevant. So I can understand the frustration, especially with our competitive community that likes to basically stay up to date and stay ahead of the meta, trying to redefine it and find new things that work. This is a big kind of gut punch to a lot of folks, because I know a lot of folks invested in Iron Hands thinking that, hey, this is going to be my new tournament list, right? So,
right.
Well,
it's tough too, because you've got the when you're reading it, you got the previews and everything. You're wanting to invest if you want to get a new army, or if you've had the army for a while. You're getting this supplement specifically for some of those special features, I guess you could say.
Right.
It's like, I want to be able to run this strong stratagem because that's what's going to be effective.
Yeah.
But then you don't know if they're going to nerf it, if they even think about it, right? Because like from GW's perspective, they're saying, long term, we have to make sure that everything is pretty well balanced.
Right.
It can't be perfectly balanced. It's like anything else. No war game is perfectly balanced.
No.
So their long term goal is to keep things balanced, right? But then you have your initial rush where your preview is all about the hype.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a catch-22. You got to be able to hype it, and you can't hype it and say, it's all going to be perfectly balanced. You have to have a little bit of something to make it special, right?
Right.
But then they only have X amount of playtests on their hands, whereas once it gets out into the broader world, you have thousands upon thousands of playtests. That's a very different thing,
Yeah.
They get feedback saying, yeah, this has wrecked me every single time I played against these Iron Hands because of this thing. So it's really tough from their position, I can see. But at the same time, as a consumer, do I want to get that purchase day one, and then knowing that it might get nerfed, that could cause some issues later on, possibly.
Right. And it's another thing, important thing to point out with the Iron Hands in particular. A lot of times these like codexes and these supplements come out, and there's ambiguous wording that leads to a conclusion that can be seen as powerful or broken on the tabletop. In the Iron Hands errata, it wasn't necessarily poor wording or anything like that. It was just a flat out, oh hey, yes, I know this says 1 CP, but we meant 2. It's not. So the original rules as written were fairly clear, with not a lot of interpretation needed. It's just Games Workshop kind of stepping back and saying, oh no, this isn't healthy for our game. Let's go ahead and change that. Change it now, as opposed to let more and more people invest and then change it, kind of thing.
Yeah, so it's totally like having pros and cons all at the same time. It's tough because from our perspective, we want to sell copies of games, right? We want to sell everyone who possibly wants an Iron Hand supplement, get it at gigabytes. That's awesome. So then you have to wait 2 weeks? Question mark.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's a tough thing.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, especially store perspective, is we want to be able to make you happy with your purchase.
Right.
I know online we saw people saying, well, this wasn't, with this errata, this was not the thing that I purchased anymore. I want to return it. It's like, oh no, that's the last thing we want to hear.
Right.
Because when you walk out of the store, especially with the new army purchase, we want you to be happy with it. We want you to be excited. We want you to play. We want you to come in and get other people excited and happy to play, regardless of whatever army they might be competing with. And so these erratas, once again, it's healthy in the long run, but in the short term, it does upset people, right? Especially if you're like a big Iron Hands player, you're like, oh, it's finally my time in the sun. And then the rug is like swept out from underneath you. It's just the nature of the tabletop in general. And I know we have a lot of folks saying, hey, why don't you wait a couple weeks, or let's until the dust settles, more or less, from a release. And it is a risk versus reward thing, right? So this is the hobby, right? Everything takes time. Everything's designed to take time. So the building, the painting, the assembling, the practice, all needs to be done, because you have about a month window before you can play with those armies in a upcoming tournament, like let's say Warzone Atlanta. So a lot of folks who have purchased that Iron Hands list, knowing that it would be legal at Warzone Atlanta, have probably started already assembling, painting, practicing, doing all that sort of stuff. And now that list has to change due to these factors. So basically, I understand from a player perspective on how it can be really, really frustrating to have an army change that drastically on you. But I always have to kind of talk from a store perspective as well. So I never want to have someone be upset with a purchase, but I also want and need the game to be in a healthy spot balance-wise, so we can continue to entice new players or get people to try new armies or different things, or just bring people in general. So it is really a catch-22. And I think I would rather it be relatively quick, like the Iron Hands FAQ, as opposed to something like, I mentioned this before we started streaming, the Slaanesh release for Age of Sigmar has been overall received as like a way too powerful release from Games Workshop. For the simple fact that the summoning in that is really, really strong. So you can basically flood out your opponents with new models relatively easy. And what has happened in the Age of Sigmar community, at least at Gigabytes, which I love to see, more or less, our community coming together to police itself in a way. This takes me back to like old fantasy days where, you had your comp points and all that sort of stuff. But our community in general our Slaanesh players more or less have taken a step back, right? We have one player who's just like, hey, I recognize that Slaanesh is not a rewarding play experience for my opponent, so I'm going to put it on the back burner. Whereas we also have a couple other players, and I think Justin's watching. He was like, well, I really like Slaanesh. I want to play Slaanesh. But what I will do is limit the summoning points that I can generate with a particular option. I will kind of police myself in my games to make sure that my opponents have fun. And these are both very, very strong characters, right? Like they're not Justin, the other guy, are, characters in the game, but sense of character, right? It's a great way to improve the community and way to do it. Unfortunately, 40K, I think, is a little too large to do that. You can't rely on the community when it's made up of such a wide and diverse people to relatively police itself, which comes into the ITC rules and things like that. That it's a little bit more, what's the word? not authoritarian, but basically ITC has a way of giving a universal format to help balance the game.
Right, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
But speaking of ITC, you were talking to me about universal terrain rules.
Yeah. So, it's something new that has come out. God, I think it was right after we got our newest event coordinator, Nick Nani. He ran an ITC tournament, and there was standardized terrain across every single table, and it was kind of cool to see the fact that like they're looking at tables as a balance factor, which is really interesting. But it's led to a couple of controversies or maybe differing opinions from there. Uh, One, the boards are 100% balanced. That is a definite pro. The definite minus is one of the guys described it best as the boards now kind of look like a cheap laser tag arena.
I can see that.
And a lot of this is because we're still in the early stages, right? Like they have the base framework of how they want the boards to be balanced. Like, like, oh, wait, we want an L-shaped building over here and a wall over here and all that. And it's currently the MDF with a very quick paint job on it. Now, as it progresses and more people get into making this standardized terrain, it can get a lot prettier. But that's where the big kind of contention is right now. It's the War Machine issue, the good old War Machine debate of which one's better, the balance of the game, or the balance of the match, or the appearance of the match to get people interested in the game, right? So is it better for the
And that's that narrative versus match play thing.
Yeah, and it's players versus audience too, right? So like people who are really into 40K or War Machine, they can see a board that may not look super pretty to an outsider, but they're like, yes, I know this is balanced, and I know this is going to be a good match, and I know it's going to come down to the skill and the dice of the players, right? But someone who's new to the game might see that and be like, why are those Space Marines playing in a laser tag zone? And that's not necessarily the first interaction you want someone to have with Warhammer 40K. The strength of Games Workshop games in general is the visual appeal, right? The giant narrative looking battles where you're fighting on an abandoned factory or some Death World forest. It's to get people pulled into that world. And when you have these standardized terrain, it kind of takes away from that world a little bit, in the fact of why are they all playing on this like one particular arena? And it's a little bit harder to put a narrative on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is interesting, and it will be kind of something that we are going to be watching and policing a little bit. And by policing, basically, if the boards don't look good enough, we're going to have to try to step in and get them to improve the appearances and all of that. Just because I want these games to look nice. I don't want it to simply boil down to, the most optimal gameplay experience with no thought on aesthetics.
Right. Well, if you look at things like Counter-Strike, you have your asymmetrical gameplay.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. Like,
yeah.
In a sense, I think asymmetry is okay, but I guess with a lot of folks, like what you're saying, with that perfect balance means that for sure it's the players and the dice.
Correct.
Because when someone makes a tactical decision that's bad, you can blame it on the player rather than, oh, well, they were further away from their terrain than the other person was, so they had to do X, Y, Z.
And that's something to where, like, I have now been competing in Age of Sigmar over the last year. And competing, I definitely put in quotes. Because one, I don't play as much as I want to, and then two, I don't think I'm a very good player, at least not yet. But one of the things that's kind of appealing about Age of Sigmar is that not only is the terrain asymmetrical, but also the rules on terrain, pretty much in every event that we go to, are randomized. So, I could be deploying my guys, and on the side of my board is a volcano, right? And on the side of my opponent's board, he could have some sort of arcane cog thing that helps his wizard out, And it comes down to me to make up for what the terrain is providing to my opponent versus what it's providing to me, and figure out a way to win the battle anyway. So I do like the asymmetry because once again it adds to the challenge of the game. But I can also understand in 40k. 40k is already challenging enough with the special rules that everything has, right? So
It's a lot, yeah.
not fighting against your terrain, I can see definitely be appealing. Um, and I can also definitely see. I think one of the big things with the standardized terrain is having things that are large enough to block line of sight. And I want to say
Right.
one of the big things that these like standard boards are bringing is something that you can hide a greater demon or a knight behind, and not have to worry about it getting shot off the board before you have a chance to take a turn with it. So that's always uh, a consideration to have. And it maybe that's something to us as a store where if enough people come to us and say, hey, we still want kind of variable terrain and asymmetrical terrain, but we need taller terrain. We need bigger pieces to hide our stuff. And it's like something as a store, you'd be like, all right, well, we can look into making that. It doesn't seem like it should be hard to make, right? So I can get some foam and cut out walls and concrete and big mechanical structures and go from there.
Yeah, what's that type of foam at the like Home Depot and Lowe's?
It is the I always want to. It's the pink foam, right? Like
Yes.
I can't remember the proper name, but like
Someone in the comments put it down there. Tell us what it is.
yeah, that's really easy. Especially we also sell hot wire cutters here, so
Oh, nice.
yeah, if you guys are ever interested in making terrain, I'm more than happy to run you through a lot of the basics. But literally, like with I think it's like a $20 hot wire cutter, a couple of bucks in pink foam, and then some Mod Podge from a local craft store. Y'all can make whatever line of sight blocking terrain you want, and you can make it look pretty darn good with minimal effort. So something.
And I like the MDF kind of stuff, like the stuff we have on the shelves there.
Yeah.
Like the big apartment buildings and stuff that you can stack up. I have a couple of them that are like 3 stories high, which ends up being, I don't know, 10 to 12 inches high.
Yeah.
I mean, that blocks line of sight for a lot of different models. Now, that might not be perfect for, I don't know, Age of Sigmar, because they're apartment buildings, but for a lot of games, that works well. And it adds that verticality element, too.
I got to go to the door real quick. 1 second.
Yeah, go for it. So speaking of verticality, I don't know, that has nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about next. But Fallout Wasteland Warfare, I've been really enjoying that one. So I've been on a skirmish game kick, simply because you get a wide variety of models. So if you just want to have 5 to 10 models on a specific game, it's great. So not only have I been playing Fallout Wasteland Warfare, I've been particularly enjoying the RPG one, which I've been running players through basically a Wizard of Oz style thing. Well, the players thought that they were helping out a young lady and her dog, being Dorothy. She actually ended up being the raider boss. So Dorothy was the raider boss in charge of this raider gang, and she did the whole ruse to get the players to help hack a computer, because her gang had no idea how to hack a computer. Absolutely hilarious. But now the players got ticked off, and they've gone and found some power armor, and now they're all jacked up and ready to kick butt and take names. So if you are at all interested in RPGs, you need to try out the Wasteland Warfare RPG, which we have on the shelves. It goes along with the miniatures game, and it is a perfect blend. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's awesome.
Yeah, definitely show off your Fallout fandom. I know we have a lot of people that are Fallout fans here because we sell a lot of the miniatures, even for painting projects or conversions, which is
well, we just got the glowing ones. We got regular ghouls, I believe,
right.
And then the robots, like the Assaultrons.
Yep. Yeah. So a whole new wave of releases just for Fallout, which is
so good.
Exciting.
So good.
So yeah, I know generally the rambles were an hour long, but the idea for the Warfare Weekly is to keep it around a half an hour point, which I believe we've met.
Yep,
so,
we're on it.
I would love to hear from all of y'all your opinions on not only quick and decisive FAQs, but also on the standardizing of terrain. So I want to see as a community what people would prefer more. Asymmetrical, themed boards or standardized boards that provide a fair and balanced gameplay. So, yeah.
Good questions to end on.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, John. This is our first episode of many to come of Wargame Weekly, and we will see y'all next Friday
And
for
thank you
episode number
for
2.
everyone who came and watched, and anyone who will watch over the next forever. So until next time, bye, everybody.